our Rosh Hashanah 5785, otherwise known as 2024 study session. Before we look at the text that I brought for us, I wanted to open up to any questions that anyone might have, in general, anything you wanted to talk about. You don't have to, but there's that. So I realized that I didn't give, that did not print the way I wanted it to. Anyway, okay, so there's a 3-page source sheet from a bunch of different things that I've been reading around the holidays. Let's start with the quote from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel that was also with us on Slichot, but a shortened version of it. A healthy life consists in knowing what one wants, seeing an ultimate goal ahead, and hoping to reach it by means of clearly understood actions. And mendacity is a disease that binds a man's entire existence. That is from A Passion for Truth. So the book itself is set up as a dual biography of Kierkegaard, who wrote a very important Christian understanding of the binding of Isaac, and the Kotzker Rabbi, who was known for being focused on the truth. But in addition to talking about those two luminaries, Heschel also describes what it felt like to be a Shoah survivor living in the United States, both during the war and after the war, the way that even Jewish life went on as if nothing was happening overseas, and that it was a really a difficult process for him to grapple with, the fact that he had lost so much of his family and others had not. And yet, beyond thinking about the historical record of how people experience tragedy from afar, it's really compelling because it helps to understand when we're pursuing lives of truth, when if we try to improve ourselves, on an annual basis, that the world around us is not at all built for that, and that there's so much to distract people from those core pursuits, and that we have to actually wrestle with that existence of the world beyond the spiritual path. And so I guess I feel the book on 3 levels, understanding these intellectuals, this intellectual history, understanding Heschel's perspective on life, and then a guide for living through life now. And then another quote about this meaning making, the will to meaning, from Viktor Frankl. Man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his life and not a secondary rationalization of instinctual drives. This meaning is unique and specific in that it must and can be fulfilled by him alone. Only then does it achieve a significance which will satisfy his own will to meaning. Man is able to live and even to die for the sake of his ideals and values. This feels very overwhelming to me. It took me many years to sort through what it meant to find a purpose that felt like solely for myself, and to accept it in, that it wasn't just some wish fulfillment, or that, secondary rationalization, right? I wrestled for 6 years with the calling to go to rabbinical school. So I don't, even though the quotes are short, they're not, they can take many years to fully sink in. And also that being a good person and like a part of a community, the idea of it doesn't have to be extremely big to be important, right? Like the meaning of our lives is as profound in the relationships we nurture than it is in any other thing that occurs because we're in the world.
You know, I see
Well,
when it comes to...
wait, let's get you the microphone.
The first part of the sentence, man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his or her life. I can see that applying to my life as well, because as a profession, I didn't land my profession until I was in my 40s, because I didn't know what I really wanted. I went with what I thought people wanted me to be. But then when I finally realized what I needed in terms of giving to society, giving to my community, that's when I finally had an aha moment. I said, okay, that's the one. And so just finding yourself and finding that something that you could apply your energies to that really means something to you. And everyone's different.
Yeah.
That makes me think of, I found like my calling of profession in my early 30s. I had been in corporate America for 10 years. And I couldn't sit in that cubicle behind that computer every day. And I said, okay, God, I'm open to what it is I'm to do next. And I set a goal of like 1995, like a year later, whatever it is I'm supposed to do. But I knew I wanted to get away from the computer and back to like human connection and human touch. And I think it was like in 95, 96, I took this aromatherapy class, and the teacher was an esthetician, and I had had acne all my life. So I went and got a treatment, and I knew not like in 2 or 3 seconds, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. And then so I started on my path of making that happen.
Right, early on, before I made my career change, like Shelley, I felt like I was chained to my desk. I felt like I was going to explode because that wasn't where I was supposed to be. But once you find your path, it's just, it happens. And your whole universe understands what your path is too. And doors open. And I was really glad that when I turned 50, I thought no one's going to want to hire me, but they did because I had my master's. And so it started working. Doors opened, and the career, I'd been in emergency management for now 30 years before I retired. So it's very giving and helping people out of the pain that they're experiencing at the moment because of an earthquake, fire, flood, or explosion.
Right.
In listening to this, I'm seeing a primary motivation, one path that you're thinking of. And I think it changes, it can change. Or you start with one idea. I knew from the time I was a child I wanted to be a teacher. I was always telling little kids what to do. So I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I became a teacher. But many years later, when circumstances changed, and I could no longer do that, then something else had come into my life, and it took a while for it to manifest, maybe 40-some years. But the second one that was life-changing came, and then the day came when it was manifested, and it's like, yeah, I've waited all this time. But two guiding things for me. No, other careers came along the way, and they were fine, they were interesting. But only two that I felt internalized. So.
I'm trying to learn from all this how to pursue what I believe is my true calling, which is physics. It's just so hard. And there's no money in it, in foundational physics. But you know, I found some initial results that I'm going to try to get published, but I just have a huge amount of anxiety about even writing it in a formal way that can get into a physics journal. And I want to find a way to overcome the fear and anxiety about living up to what is, I believe, is my calling. That's something I'm hoping to learn.
I mean, fear is its own animal that we all have to face in our own time, and with inner strength that in some ways can't be taught. I think about the way, part of the reason I enjoy fiction is that it teaches me how to be strong, and how to live forward, accepting what has happened in the past without letting it drag me down. Like characters that go through this like hero's journey where like so many people think negatively about them and don't think that they can succeed, but they remember who they truly are inside and overcome all of that inward and outward pressure to ignore their destiny and then fulfill their destiny. Reminds me that we all have that strength within us. The other thing I wanted to say is that I'm not sure that paid work is everyone's fulfillment of their what they can do alone. Well, first of all, capitalism isn't the ultimate goal of human flourishing. I mean, I say that regardless of how much of a capitalist you are, that your spirit, that everyone's spirit needs something beyond what we do that earns us money. And that one of the biggest reasons that Jewish spirituality claimed me was when my rabbi said, do your duty. So if you are frustrated by your work, you have two options. You can quit, or you can accept that it's not what you want it to be and do your duty and move on, but don't make the people around you miserable by complaining about it. You are in full control of your own destiny. And it really shocked me awake. I met my husband working with him. So he was listening to me complain about the person I was complaining about was also the person that brought him into our company. So it was sort of like, what do you want me to do about it? You know, like without her, we wouldn't be together. So you got to figure out your own stuff out. It's not about her. It's about where you want to go in life. And then even through that, you know, he was very skeptical. I mean, we were together when I felt the call to go to rabbinical school, and he said, you know, when you get to the end point of all you love studying. He had no, you know, he figured out I could do the study part, right? But like when you get to the end of it, what if you get so frustrated that you can't do it as a job? And I said, well, that's totally fair. I don't have any background. I didn't work as a Jewish professional before this, but if it doesn't go my way, you know, I'll fall back on the advertising stuff that brought us together. So I'll just be an advertising professional with another degree. Thankfully, that is not the case. But it's just to say that we can fulfill our dreams beyond how we make a living. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that.
Meg.
Just wanted to mention that once I got into my profession, I did pro bono work because there were cities that couldn't afford me. And it was a city of Alameda, actually, in the fire department. And so I just said, I live here, let me just do it. And it felt so satisfying. And I didn't feel like I needed a dollar amount or anything like that. I just felt really fulfilled, just being able to give of my expertise and get it back as well in terms of them actually absorbing what I taught them and moving forward.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that I probably didn't read meaning of life as far as individual looking for calling, because like to me it always was meaning for life. It's like that's for all people, not me specifically, like what is the meaning of life, like philosophical question. But when, if talking about pursued by person, like I did have like surely, like I'm a mathematician and computer programmer all my life, right? And so at some point I never was in hospital or whatever. I mean, was pretty healthy person. Didn't think about medical field at all till I got to hospital first time when I was like 28. Already had my education and profession and everything. And here I understood that I want to be a doctor. I want to be a woman's doctor. And I tried. It's in Russia, it's no question. You cannot get second highest level degree because it's free. You know, you're supposed to be, unless your employer needs that, which mine obviously didn't. So I was trying, and here when I came in the United States, I was 38, and with my profession, I was keeping family. So money-wise, it was very important to keep to keep making money, you know, and to go to medical school. So I thought it's like, so I forgot about. I just let it go. Yeah. And I love my profession. Always did. Always loved with dealing with computer, with math. I understand you about physics, but it just didn't happen. So the second. Oh, come on. I mean, I don't think so. I don't think I get anymore.
I know.
So it's not only, what I'm trying to say is that calling is not only professional, like you said.
Right.
It's not only profession. It's how you are as a person, how you relate to other people and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And meaning of life is more than calling. That's it. Thank you.
I remember when I got out of college in my early 20s, I was so lost. I was so lost. And I read Man's Search for Meaning at that time. I don't know what I got from it. I don't remember what I got from it back then, from who I was. But yeah, I've been like searching for a deeper something almost my whole life. And I'm so glad like I find that here, because I've gone different avenues. And this is where I am now, at almost 59 years old.
So let's look at another perspective on how to see this time of year. Cosmic nervous system. The entire month of Tishrei and all its holidays are the main energy centers, the cosmic nervous system, controlling the entire year. Rosh Hashanah infuses us with the ability all year round to accept and connect to our divine calling. It gives us the power to renew our lives and reconnect to our life's mission each day of the year. Yom Kippur is the source of holiness and teshuvah, returning to God in repentance after a transgression for the entire upcoming year. Sukkot is the source of joy for the entire year. It reminds me of another teaching of Rabbi Mordechai Finley, that each of our holidays is a refraction of energy that is available to us every day of the year. So it's not that we should only confess our sins on Yom Kippur, but that we should have a clear idea of how to apologize and move forward from our mistakes every day. And we actually have a confessional prayer in the weekday Amidah available to us to reconnect with God. And a reminder that the confessions that we do publicly on Yom Kippur has nothing to do with any transgression we do between us and another person. That we have to think clearly about it and walk through the steps of requesting forgiveness, giving amends if we need to, and ensuring that if the same situation happens again, that we choose a different path. And now, so I read this book on Unetana Tokev. It's called Who by Fire, Who by Water, Unetana Tokev. It's got a series of essays based on the prayer. So here's an excerpt from one of them. In my heart of hearts, I know that I have as little control as any other sheep in the flock. At the moment of Unetana Tokev, I know for a certainty that my life hangs in the balance. When these high holy days end, I may be lulled back into my false sense of security, the cocoon of my routine. But today, I feel my exposure, sense the danger inherent in life, re-encounter my mortality. My end is dust. But part of the future is in my control. Will I allow envy, jealousy, and enmity to occupy my days, or will I grow in maturity and self-reflection? Will I persist in egotism and grandiosity, or will I find my way toward humility and gratitude? Will I be totally possessed by my desire to get ahead, or will I remember to look out for others and act caringly? Will I learn to be happy with my lot, or will nothing truly satisfy me? Teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah will mitigate the bad in the decree. I cannot control the unexpected blows that affect my family, my job, my health, but I can control how I live with them. Teshuvah means returning to awareness of the one and walking the path of Torah. Tefillah, prayer, can cultivate gratitude, innerness, connection to transcendent values, and spiritual depth. Tzedakah is not just about giving significant amounts to charity and thereby cultivating personal generosity. It is also about making the pursuit of tzedek, justice, a central part of life. That's Rabbi David H. Tuch from his essay, The Call to Turn Inward. And I really particularly love his sense of tefillah, cultivating gratitude, innerness, and connection to transcendent values. Because it's always confusing to me when people are put off by prayer services. I feel like I need to change the service or sort through how to welcome more people into it, not give it up just because people say they don't like it. And I also think about how I had no idea, growing up and into adulthood, no idea that gratitude was part of what we were doing in our prayer services. Like, the prayer book I grew up with didn't have a good translation of the Hebrew, and none of the communities that I was a part of focused on that. There was more of a focus on, either it was the focus on we're getting through the prayers, right? We have to do all the prayers. We're gonna speed read them so we get through all of them, or just we do this because we have to, right? There was just that sense of the flow of the service, of the way that it is put together to allow us to go on a journey inward, that the order of our service recognizes that we don't start out fully awake or fully ready to encounter the divine, that we have to wake ourselves up in the morning with morning words, and then we're able to do a little praise, light song that helps us to flow into flow into gratitude. And then once we have awakened from those two levels, then we can really encounter the divine and speak about the relationship and recognize what a blessing the coming day is. Recognize that holiness and love are always reaching towards us, and then respond back to that love with our own affirmation of our love for the divine. It's, it's really interesting the way we say listen so much, because that's the first, maybe the translation of the first word of the Shema. It actually means multiple things at the same time. Listen, hear, understand, like focus in on this thought. And the Ve'ahavta is part of the Shema. It flows directly from it. And Ve'ahavta means you will love. So we really are talking about what we are proclaiming our love for. Yeah, Sharon, can we get her the mic?
Just a very short thing. Could you define un tane tokef? I've forgotten what it means. Un tane tokef.
Well, I am a bit tired, so let's look in our prayer book, because it does say, like, there's even a reference to which line it is. Yeah, it's in our, it's in the Amidah, and let's see where it is. No, we chanted it this morning. Here we are.
The way that the English translation is, it seems like it's just like, hear what we're saying.
Let us proclaim is what Unatana Tokev means. The power of this day, yeah. And I will, or let us embrace. I will look up the Hebrew and get back to you for a more precise, but it is in the plural. I can tell you it's the plural of future tense, because it starts with the nun. The word starting with the nuns indicates that it's for us to do together. Yeah, of course. And the words of Unatana Tokef go through how God is judging us. It's a poem about of God opening up the book of life and book of death, and that we pass before God like sheep before their shepherd. Yeah. And there's also 2 study pages in our Siddur for the Unatana Tokef that are, as beautiful as anything as reading the whole book. It is pages 172 and 173 in the Rosh Hashanah book, Machzor. Yeah. So there's a couple of central prayers that are really only said on the High Holy Days. Unatana Tokef is one of them. The full Avinu Malkeinu is another one. It's very interesting. Our Machzor has Avinu Malkeinu in it, the prayer itself, and yet for Ahava Rabbah, the great love that we say before Shema, it removes that phrase from the traditional prayer. The Reform book removes it, and it is because of how difficult that metaphor is for so many people to accept. Avinu, our Father, Malkeinu, our King, our Sovereign. You know my opinions on these things as those were I spoke about it last night.
Well, I think think that the question is, how does one love a metaphysical, transcendent thing? And then we read that metaphysical, transcendent thing is judging us and is deciding whether we live or die. It is passing us like sheep and goat through the gates. That's hard. That's much harder than Malkeinu, right? I'm supposed to love a thing that definitionally I cannot define, right? Definitionally, I cannot define it. And that thing, according to our liturgy, is the supreme judge. And by judge, they're not talking about, they mean judge. They mean the hanging judge. They mean a really hard judge. How do we do that? And I think that's the separation from prayer that people get. Is you're asking me to do an impossible thing, and B, a thing I don't want to do.
I mean, I think that our constant negation of our own descriptions of the divine is part of the reason that Judaism never became that big of a community. That and the fact that we never separated the understanding of peoplehood from ourselves. So we weren't trying to go out and get everyone to become Jewish. Primarily, we just, our future generations were the ones we created. But I don't think even, I fully believe that even when these prayers were written, there were people, they were written in a way to make space for everyone, regardless of their spiritual level. So if the only way that you could connect with God was to understand God as the shepherd and us as God's flock, then here it was in plain language for you. If you could see it as a poem and a metaphor, here it is for you as a poem. If you could go even deeper than that and connect it to different emanations of God, we can all do that with the same source. But if we only take our prayers by the literal translations, then it's like asking poetry to answer what really happened in the Bronze Age of humanity. It's just not, that's not the purpose of it. It's always been there to speak to our souls and to help us become more mindful of the lives we're living. Because we don't know who's going to live and who's going to die. There's another part that says, who by fire, who by earthquake, who by plague. I mean, some of those things meant something to me 5 years ago, but one of those has come into a whole new understanding of my body in the last 5 years. And so I think we do ourselves and our spiritual tradition a disservice to say, of course it's disorienting, it's separating. I think that we haven't had the best translators. We haven't had the best teachers. In part because our people were shattered. We as a people were shattered by the Shoah. I mean, there's a reason to call it the catastrophe. Because a lot of people had a different understanding of the divine than I do, right? They believe that God is both all-knowing and all-powerful, and that the future is understood and known by God. Well, I can't envision an eminence or an imminence that I could connect with who would be okay with people being slaughtered. Whether it's the Shoah or a plague or an earthquake, none of these things feel like justice, but they just feel like life, and that goodness and truth can be there for us despite the suffering that happens in life. And that when we hold space for ultimate values, that can be, it feels deeper and richer to me than a tangible thing. And it also makes me feel more responsible for my life, that I can't hand my life over to someone else to take control of, that I have to mindfully choose this path, or else I'm not going to stay, or else I'm just going to yell at my kids when I go home, right? It's really that simple. It's like either I'm going to remember who I want to be, or I'm going to fall off the derech eretz. Yeah.
Yeah, I always think of, I'm just sort of developing for myself this notion of God that I kind of imagine, I spent this in the book thing, that it's like a moving sidewalk. And we can choose, we all know inherently that there's something good. We all know inherently there are behaviors that can lead to better relationships to others, to the earth, and all that. And I think of that as a moving sidewalk, and I can get on it. And if I don't get on it, my life is more difficult. I'm less connected. I may be physically alive, but my spirit isn't. And I might be in my apartment with the blinds pulled, just watching junk on streaming channels, instead of learning and singing and interacting with others and finding fulfilling work. So we know inherently, I think we all know, except for total nihilists, I guess, that there is this good path, and that good path to me is what God is. That's what I think it is, and the life or death judgment is: are we going to choose that path? That it's much easier. It's hard work, but it's actually much easier, in a way. So that's what it means to me.
So the second half of our, oh yeah, go ahead.
When I first started coming to synagogue as a Christian, a Catholic, we came to services, and there was one prayer that kicked me in the butt. It's very short. It says, "Pray as if everything depended on God. Act as if everything depended on you." And that really did kick my butt, because I thought, you mean I can do that? You mean if I decide to do something, I can do that. I could choose to do that and do it, instead of praying to God to make sure it's going to happen. So those two sentences really got me and allowed me to do what I need to do, whether it's in my community or at work or anywhere else. It's up to me, because God's given me that ability to make that kind of decision for myself and my community.
So beautiful. Thank you. The second half of the source sheet is on ethical literature in particular. So Joseph Dan describes ethical literature as dealing with the practical consequences of religious adherence in the realm of daily behavior, both between man and God and between man and man, ritualistic as well as social ethics. So I really appreciated Joseph Dan's definition, because it brought in the idea that ethics can be both about how we interact with other humans and how we interact with the divine. And then I used Dan, along with a couple of others, to define both ethics and mysticism at the beginning of my rabbinic thesis. And I wrote about 3 books that are quoted below. Although, ironically, I chose to quote the Zohar from the first book. The first book is dense and beautiful, and there is a complete English translation of it. It's The Soul of Life, Nefesh HaChaim by Rav Chaim of Volozhin. So here are some quotes from the Zohar. Thought, will, vocalization, and speech are the 4 that create the connection. And after all of them are connected as one, they become one vehicle upon which the Shekhinah can settle. It's this idea that we we must be mindful on all of these levels, on the level of thought and will, and then the vocalization and speech, and then through those combined, the indwelling presence of God can come to us. And then whatever a person thinks and whatever a person contemplates in his heart mind has no effect until it is emitted from his lips. And as a result, any prayer or petition, he must express them with his lips, because if he does not express them, his prayer is not considered a prayer, and his petition is not considered a petition. And once the words get expressed, they split apart in the air and ascend, and the one who takes them does so and unifies them for the holy crown. I really love this idea, first, that we are allowed to think, and we shouldn't castigate ourselves for having thoughts, but that what really matters is how we transform our thoughts and feelings into what we utter with our mouths and what we do with our hands. But that there is true life in the words that we speak, and that when we speak, it is of utmost importance what we say, and that they can split apart in the air and ascend. It's just such a beautiful picture. So a couple of other ideas on how to put this stuff into action. First, from Mesilat Yesharim, The Path of the Upright by Rabbi Moshe Luzzatto. He must contemplate and survey his actions and his conduct to see whether they are good or not, so as not to risk the loss of his soul. I really do feel the alienation from my soul when I dive into like endless streaming video watching. I mean, we all need to space out sometimes. I'm not denying that it's, a healthy part of life, but like you can really go over the edge into like just not being there with yourself anymore. And then Moshe Cordovero in Tomer Devorah, which translates to the palm tree of Devorah, says, "It is proper that man's actions imitate the 13 supernal attributes of mercy, the functions of the Sephirah of Keter." So the 13 attributes of mercy are the 13 descriptions of the divine that were said at the beginning of our Torah service that start, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'chanim, of compassion, God of compassion and grace. And each of those 13 different elements connect us deeper into the ultimate ideals to attach oneself to. Because Keter is the highest of the Sephirah, the first two chapters of Tomer Devorah describe. The whole book is Immutatio Dei, giving you ethical. It's an ethical treatise as if you are imitating God. And you would think that it would start out with like the easiest part, but it starts out with the hardest part. Because in reality, none of us are perfect, and none of us can truly reach this highest level of the divine that we can possibly connect with here in material reality. There should be a break before that and the next part. But I wanted to give you a little bit of Rabbi Finley's teaching. He is a very stoic person, and if you've only heard that in like passing with in a philosophy class, let me tell you that it is about like, it's a very hard line, and it's not, it doesn't appeal to everyone. But Stoic Jewish path is to completely avoid the 4 C's. That means no criticizing, no complaining, no condemning, and reduce conflict. So what does criticism mean? Pointing out flaws. What does complaining mean? complaining to a person, or your internal litany of complaints. And condemning includes accusing, labeling, and blaming. And you should not have unfair behavior in conflict or unnecessary behavior in conflict. It's almost impossible to live up to this standard, but if you try to do it, and if you remind yourself as you are in conversation with others, it can help you to pause, or at least to limit how much you complain. And to remember that especially criticizing and complaining, I know that these things okay, I'll just speak for myself. They come naturally to me when I'm really invested in something, because I really want to wrestle out smooth everything out and make it as good as it possibly can be, right? So I think that I have this righteous reason that I am trying to sort this stuff out, but it doesn't help anyone. And it particularly doesn't help a community to both be proud of itself for where it is at the time, or to reach towards something more. Which is why this is, when I was studying for this Rosh Hashanah, this really came back to me, because I've been struggling with how to help this become more of our ethos as a community. That we shouldn't need to have a space to dump all of what we think about one another, right? And that we should sort out how to speak positively and move forward in a more positive fashion, and not think that we need to navigate around, what do they think about me? Who are they talking to? The gossip enterprise that is normal in a lot of society doesn't help to deepen spiritual community, and it's an interesting thing, because it's not like we're not a society where you have to go through tests in order to become part of us, right? We are all seekers, and we're all on our own journeys, and it's healthy for us to have different opinions, and most of all, we need to sort out how to be in community with one another, even through our differences.
I tend to look at those 4 C's in sort of a neurological way, that when you do a thing, it reinforces that path in your head. So the more you complain, the more you complain. And even if you artificially turn yourself off and just don't do it, you didn't reinforce that path in yourself, right? And again, what you said before, that you're allowed to think. It's what you say that matters. So I don't like that this is true. What do I do about that? Right? I had worked for a boss for a lot of years who, anytime I'd come to him with an issue or problem, he'd say, I don't want problems, I want solutions. What is the solutions? And people would, consultants would say, this is a solution opportunity. Great. Okay. So that, and doing that reinforces those neural paths and those community values of we are can-do, we are solution-oriented. Having been president, I know about the complaining.
There's a brilliant out-of-print book that you might be able to find on Abe Books called Justice and Mercy, Commentary on the Liturgy of the New Year and the Day of Atonement by Max Arzt. So here's a couple of paragraphs from it. To live a life of principle means to relate one's actions to an all-embracing purpose. That purpose is always in danger of being obscured because of the appeal of distracting and unworthy preoccupations. Too often, we fail to view the task of the hour in the perspective of the centuries and we yield to the momentary temptations of the heart and the eye. The tzitzit are here depicted in the Shema as symbols of our dedication to the service of God and as reminders not to default in the duties that accompany it. It's my only pet peeve about Mishkan Tefillah is that it cut off. We in our community, we traditionally only say the last part of the third paragraph of the Shema, and we cut off the part that is most meaningful to me. The Hebrew language has no exact equivalent for the term New Year. Rosh Hashanah means literally the beginning of the year. In a sense, the year is not new, not the year, but each individual must become as new. Life can be a progress and unfolding of moral and intellectual growth, or it can be purposeless. The choice is man's, but it is for God to judge that choice, to approve it or to rebuke it. Man can become a new personality if he remembers the psalmist's prayer. So teach us to number our days that we may get us a heart of wisdom. Psalm 90, verse 12. And if he considers each day a fresh occasion on which to mature his judgment and to refine his sensibilities. Many of these people use he to indicate all of us. And another great book for this time of year, This is Real and You Are Completely Unprepared, The Days of Awe as a Journey of Transformation. Your days are like scrolls, Rabbi Bachya ibn Pakuda wrote. Write on them only what you would like to have remembered. So the process of teshuvah is neither clear nor linear. And who is the principal actor in all of this? Is it us or is it God? Teshuvah, transformation, is a reciprocal process that depends on both God and us. No one else can do transformation for us, but on the other hand, we can't do it by ourselves either. The possibility of transformation always exists, but we have to consciously turn toward it in order to activate it. At the same time, our initiative can only take us so far. After that, we have to have faith. We have to depend on the universe to support the flowering of our intention. I think that's a better answer, Michael, to your earlier question, that we have to depend on the universe to support the flowering of our intention. I realized that I didn't write down on this source sheet the website that I recommend for this time of year, which is doyou10q.com. doyou10q.com. It's a project of a group called Reboot, and it has been around for at least since 2018, probably a few years before that. And it'll ask you a question for each of the 10 days of Teshuvah, and then it's a vault that closes at the end of Yomim Noraim, and then it opens again next year, so you'll be able to review your past answers and answer the same questions again. And it's it's a brilliant way to help us think through and urge ourselves towards transformation. DOYOU 1 Q.com. Yeah. Yeah, just the letter Q, but it indicates question. And I think also Rabbi Simon Jacobs has a website and a center on the East Coast, and his organization sends out daily emails around this time of year as well. They also send out around the counting of the Omer, but particularly around this time of year. When I was writing my sermons for Rosh Hashanah, my husband Chung said, "Why are you repeating how to apologize properly from last year? And why are you doing it now on Rosh Hashanah instead of Yom Kippur?" You'll notice I didn't actually say any of that. I cut it from my sermon, but I have this overwhelming desire to remind people that the 10 days of Teshuvah are supposed to be meaningful, and they're supposed to be a time for us to really connect with the people that are most important to us in our lives, and to offer apologies for any way that we have harmed them. That there is time, part of the reason there is time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is for us to make amends with other people before we ask God for forgiveness. Because asking God for forgiveness will never set right our relationships with other humans, and that apologizing is absolutely our responsibility. And the Jewish idea is that forgiveness is never expected, or it's never you are never judged if you cannot forgive someone. The person who harmed you has to, on 3 separate occasions, completely separate occasions, ask for forgiveness honestly and completely, and not in a way of, if you felt bad about what I did, that is not an apology. That is a shirking of responsibility. You have to be very clear on what you did wrong and take full accountability for it. That is the only way to truly apologize to someone. And just that, like, we're allowed to be ultimately hurt, and that we're allowed to move on with our lives without another person. And we're also allowed to forgive someone and still not have them be a part of our center of our lives, right? Like that, just because you accept an apology doesn't mean you are obligated to be in a relationship with that person. I find this to be an extremely helpful and healthy way of interpersonal interaction, that we are not, we don't have to blindly forgive people, especially if they haven't apologized. Yes, please.
What comes to mind with regards to apologizing is the question, how do you apologize to somebody who's already passed away? Because I can think about it, but they're not here to hear what I want to tell them.
Yeah.
Mine, I guess, is similar to yours. How do you apologize, how do you forgive someone who has hurt somebody else that you love? They haven't hurt me. They can't touch me. Mm-hmm. But how can I forgive that person for what they've done to somebody else?
So in the first, there's obviously never full closure with people who have passed from this world to the next. But we can try to journal, and we can speak aloud to their spirit, and pray that that we ourselves can find the healing that's necessary to hold the relationship with respect and honor. We have to separate ourselves from other people. It's not on us to forgive people for what they do to someone else. But being fully present to our loved ones and honoring their choices in life is the most we can do. They might choose to forgive people we would never forgive, but we shouldn't be judging them for doing that. That everyone has the right to make their own decisions, their own mistakes, or their own path forward, and that other people's relationships are not. It's really it can be really painful and harmful to a larger family dynamic, especially if you hold a grudge against someone that another person has forgiven. I have definitely experienced that. And the rift that it causes is it's just, it's bad. I think that's where Stoicism comes in. You know, it's not, just because someone doesn't live up to our values doesn't mean that they're not a good person. They're going through their own lives, and their sense of ethics might be a bit different than ours.
It's
Yeah.
very hard to understand that a person thinks they are behaving morally when they're making you angry. I just said it can be very hard to understand that a person can do a thing that you judge to be utterly wrong, but from their frame of reference, they are behaving correctly. They may even say, I am doing this knowing that it will create problems and difficulties and people won't forgive me for it. But I have to do the right thing, and I am that strong, and I will do that thing. And
Yeah.
very hard.
As someone who's new to embracing Judaism, I kind of look back on the past year and I wish there was a grandfather clause, because I didn't know this was the rules. I'm sort of joking, but yeah, there's some things that related to my long ago past where I reacted to somebody in a very harsh way. And it's probably a little much for me to apologize for, quite honestly, because I'm estranged from that person. Yeah. I kind of wish I could start the whole year over and not have done the things I did. And it's hard. I'm in a hard situation. So, yeah.
I think that's what this is about, though, right? Like, you're returning, you're deciding, if I were in that situation again, I would do it differently next time.
Yeah. That's why I try to, in addition to reminding us that this is a time of self-reflection, that it's not a time for self-flagellation, that we are not here to think of ourselves as unworthy. We are fully worthy of love. We are always worthy of love and respect and honor. We each carry within us a spark of the divine. And within each soul contains worlds. And so, you know, I certainly have not had the straightest path to sitting before you here. And I felt the crushing weight of disapproval of myself. And we can only move from here forward. And we can try to clean up our relationships, and we can accept with sorrow if we have, if our choices move us away from other people. But we can create community with others who are on the same road as we are.
I think a way to forgive ourselves is to learn by our mistakes. And as we realize we did something that we regret, but if we have learned by it, in a sense you're forgiving yourself because you've learned to move forward. And each time you learn that you've forgiven yourself without actually saying, I'm sorry for what I did, but now you're putting action with it.
Yeah.
Question regarding asking for forgiveness for someone who has passed, or asking for forgiveness from someone who you are estranged from, since that person is not required to forgive, nor are you supposed to go into the apology with the expectation of forgiveness, does simply asking for forgiveness to the universe, to the world, to the community, meet that obligation?
Two things. If a person has passed, definitely if faced with the same situation, not doing the same thing again, shows that you have learned from your mistake. Being estranged from a living person is not the same thing. We are required to reach out to people who are alive, to ask if they are willing to give us time to apologize. We shouldn't be barreling into an apology with someone who's not talking to us, right? So they have the option of declining to engage. But we should have the strength to be able to reach across that division. There's times when other people will say, we're estranged because you need to apologize to me. And if you don't feel like you did something if you don't feel like you have something to apologize for, you can also accept that you no longer have that relationship. It's not a we always have to apologize if someone demands it of us. Now, it's also true, 10 days of Teshuvah is not just about seeking out people to apologize to. You can also have a deep conversation with someone to express to them what they did that hurt you. And in that conversation, or maybe it might take them a little bit to process what you've said to them before they're able to apologize, because apologizing doesn't come easily, especially in areas where heightened emotions are involved. So we should allow people space to process before expecting an apology, but we should also be willing to have those hard conversations with the person that harmed us, because the alternative to that is complaining about them to someone else. So rather than complaining about them, we should confront them respectfully. And we should always try to process our emotional reactions to people, whether through thought, through journaling, or one chavruta, not all of your friends, but our tradition teaches that we should have one partner for gossip and for processing, and that you're both bound in the same way that I'm bound in when I give pastoral care to not speak about it to anyone else. So we also recognize that sometimes you just have to vent. Just don't vent to the whole world. And it's easier said than done. And I think part of that is that it's hard for us to confront people. I think part of the reason that gossip, casual conversation about that is complaining feels more comfortable than actual confrontation with the person that you're frustrated with. And we all have to learn both how to have our connection to our own egos softened to be able to accept rebuke and to acknowledge when we've done wrong. It's interesting because for me, it's much easier within my family to recognize when I've done something wrong and apologize for it than it is in like a work situation. I have this I don't know, I have a wound about, part of the thing about accepting your life up to this point, right? I have a wound about how I didn't feel fully seen in my career before becoming a rabbi, right? And so I'm still in this defensive posture, even though I'm in a completely different career. But like, I wasn't one of the, okay, I went to a college that's ad campaigns for fundraising from alumni is like Women Who Will, and you go into poli-sci or international relations, peace and justice studies, the areas that I was studying, and you're expected to be, no pressure, the next Madeleine Albright or Hillary Rodham Clinton to alumni, or Madam Chiang Kai-shek. You know, we're not all Americans that came from Wellesley, like just, you know, totally realistic for every alum to be like this. Yeah. So navigating those like internal expectations of yourself and that internal world of woundedness, because we all have a core wound that we need to work on through life, and not being seen is one explanation of my core wound. So being able to recognize that and hold myself smaller than the puffed up thing that I think I need to do to protect myself is part of the work that I'm doing.
I found it helpful the way that you were talking about community and some of the quotes about how to engage well in community, because I think all of that is also really applicable on the level of, you know, internal self, how we can be so self-critical and complain a lot about how we're not good enough and we could never do that, and all of the less than helpful condemning kind of things and the internal conflict. So I think it's easier for me to visualize, and I have like more compassion for other people. So being able to see it at the level of the community of, no, I wouldn't want to do that to somebody else. So, okay, why am I doing that to me?
Yeah. One of the other practices that Rabbi Finley suggests, he's all about a daily practice because you can't remember to do this stuff if you don't remind yourself on a daily basis. And so his morning practice includes assembling the ministers within yourself. So he was teaching this way before that Pixar movie, whose name I'm... Inside Out, yes, exactly. Way before Inside Out, but it's the same concept, that you have a minister of justice, a minister of anger, a minister of play, a minister of fairness, a minister of joy. Like, all of these ministers get together and look at any particular situation in your life, and they have to speak from their essential nature. And through this, you can come to have a better understanding of both why you did what you did and how you might do things differently in the future. And it's pretty, it didn't really sit well with me because minister sounds very, I don't know, male to me. But Inside Out made it like much clearer to me, right? That we like, why is it that my anger button is always on red alert? Like, what happened in my life that was my main way of dealing with frustration? You know, oh, okay, I can work with this. And then like just remembering that like joyous memories, like there's a reason they fade away, but also like we can hold on to them a little bit better and like live into joy in a different way. Like, just because the world around us is bananas, we don't have to be bananas. We can live, and we can choose to be the people we want to be, regardless of what happens around us. This was really important to me, especially when I had a job I didn't like. Like, you choose how you enter each day. And that was a life-changing idea for me. It's the reason that I started, the daily practice that I started was prayer. It's, you know, one of the things that I'm wrestling with is why I let that go by the wayside. It didn't happen right away when I had kids, but somewhere around the time of like having to take people to school, I stopped really being able to do this morning ritual stuff. And So and I had to let go. I think I read The Artist's Way, and I know I read it way before I ever thought about having children. So and from a Jewish perspective, that there's this like set time when you can wrap yourself into tefillin. I had to let go of the fact that these things weren't going to happen before I had breakfast. And like, okay, if I do a daily practice, regardless of what time of day it is, it's going to be helpful for me. And that's part of what I'm living into as we enter this new year. So I thank you all for joining me. We can stick around, drink more of Sharon's coffee, or have some more water, or take a nap, absolutely. Yeah.
There's some refrigerated sparkling cider that was supposed to be for last night. You could have one of those.
Yeah, and then Tashlich is happening, I believe, at 4, and then children's service at 4:30. So thank you, and we'll see you again tomorrow night at 7:30 for Shabbat Shuvah.
4:30 Tashli?
No, it's 4 o'clock Tashlich, I think, and then 4:30 children's service. Yeah. 7:30.